All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Deering Live. Hey, today we're with John Jennings from Royer Microphones and Matt Coles from Compass Sound Studios in Nashville. We're here to talk about mic placement for recording a banjo. If you haven't done this before, we'll also talk a little bit about just some general basic recording tips, and I'm sure you'll learn something for recording any instrument too. And so, hey John, hey Matt, how y'all doing?
David, doing great. Hey, glad to be here.
John, why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little about the Royer story, just real briefly to let everybody know.
Sure. I'm one of the founders and owners of Royer Labs. We started in 1998, and David Royer had designed the R121, which turned out to be an exceptional sounding microphone, and we basically built the company on that mic and then all the other ribbon mics that we've developed over the years. The thing about ribbons that really sets them apart is that they hear more like the human ear than any other microphone type. So you use different microphones to capture instruments the way you want to capture them. But when you want them to sound the way they are in a room, you throw up a good ribbon, and it really helps get you there very quickly. So we're big ribbon fanatics. Obviously, that's what Royer has been based on. We won a Grammy in 2013, a technical Grammy, for the impact that ribbons made, particularly in digital recording, because in the digital world, you don't have tape softening and compressing the audio and giving you a more sort of a musical tone. You have you're dealing with the reality of whatever the microphone throws at Pro Tools or whatever your recording system is. So it was getting kind of brittle because a lot of mics have a lot of high-end energy, which is excellent on some instruments and on some recording mediums. But when you're looking for something that doesn't introduce additional highs and just gives you a really natural sort of a sound, you go to a good ribbon, and it really helps get you there. So I'm sort of a ribbon fanatic, and I'm really happy that Deering reached out to Royer some months ago and asked us to collaborate on a video series, which will be up soon. And then they brought Matt Coles in as the engineer, who's got a deep background working with Allison and Stuart Duncan and a number of other great players. And he engineered the sessions, and then in these sessions gives a lot of information on mic placement and so forth. So anyway, that's that. It's a bit about me. I'm a musician too, love playing. Got my Deering banjo here too. I'm not a great banjo player, but I'm gonna learn. I'm a bit more of a guitar guy, but I picked up my Deering and I love it. And my friends who've come by to check it out love it too. So really looking forward to being here today and talking about this.
Very good. You'll be thinking of yourself as a banjo player first soon enough.
All right.
Matt, why don't you give us a brief, introduce yourself and some people you've worked with and things like that.
Well, my name's Matt Coles. I've been an engineer here in Nashville for almost 20 years. It's, Nashville's such a unique place. It's been a wild ride. Everyone from, starting out at Sound Kitchen Studios, working on Brooks and Dunn and, all the big country acts, and then also branching out into some more rock like Rush. We worked on some of that. Alice Cooper. Recently, just the Eagles. It's been, freelance here in town, so I've been at many different studios and many different facilities with many different producers and artists. I've landed here at Compass Records recently, in the past 5 years. Really enjoyed working on the Americana music and bluegrass. The musicianship is just outstanding. Anywhere you go in Nashville, it is, but it's just, there's some serious pickers here, and it's just a joy to work on some of that music. Anyway, yeah, I've been here for the past, like I said, about 5 years, working with Allison and Gary, Wes, the owner, and people like Stuart Duncan and many other fantastic world-class players, using all sorts of microphones to record and capture sounds. But yeah.
Very good. Well, yeah, for everybody, we recorded we made some videos. We started a video series on how to mic a banjo, featuring Allison Brown and Stuart Duncan. That'll be launching next week, I believe, and it goes into depth in various aspects about mic placement and different things you might run into. But we'll talk about some of these things today as well. Do you want us maybe we could show the trailer of one of these videos?
Hi, my name's Allison Brown, and we're here in Nashville, Tennessee at the Compass Sound Studio. This afternoon we want to demonstrate microphone placement for recording the 5-string banjo.
All right, there's a little taste of what's to come.
I love that. It's so good. Those two are such great players. They had such a good time together, obviously, and then playing by themselves. It's like this was a real joy to work on this video series.
It's been fun just seeing what's come out, seeing the content that's been captured, hear the playing, and I've learned a lot too just from watching it. Why don't we get into just a little bit about the different types of mics that there are out there in the world? I'm not either one of you could pick up on this, but for somebody that really isn't familiar with just general overall, the types of mics, a basic overview. Could you go over that maybe?
Well, there's dynamic microphones, which are more like the SM57s, the 421s, and usually a bit lower in level to mic preamps and stuff. Then you have condenser microphones, which usually take phantom power. They'll give a higher signal, a little brighter, a little more present on the low end sometimes. Then you have the magical ribbon microphones. Everybody loves. I love.
I do too. Clearly, the dynamics are great because those are the ones you see the singers taking on stage or swinging around or dropping and picking back up, and
yeah.
You can really beat them, and they'll take that beating. They don't have quite the sensitivity at all of a condenser or a ribbon mic, but they do some things really well, like kick drums and live electric guitars and live vocals, and the condensers, like what Matt was saying, they're brighter sounding, and you really hear that. And sometimes that's great, like on a pop vocal where you want the vocal to really cut through. It kind of, you hear all the stuff going on in the singer. But you don't always want that on instruments. And sometimes on an instrument like banjo, it can be really tough because it accentuates all the highs and you end up getting a brittle sounding instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you throw a ribbon up, and I'm not just here to do a big rah-rah ribbon because all microphone types really are useful, but the ribbon will just hear the banjo very naturally. And if you're looking for that tone that you have in the room, that's pretty much what you're going to get with a good ribbon. Not the cheap stuff. It's like that with all microphones. If you go really cheap, you can go inexpensive, but do it carefully. But a decent ribbon will really give you that natural tone in the room.
What about, can we talk about basic polarity patterns, and just kind of what different situations you might choose one type of pattern over another?
You want me to start, Matt, and then you sort of pick it up?
Sure. Well, obviously ribbon microphones are figure 8 patterns, which meaning they hear on the front side. On the back side, they'll hear out of phase. But it's on the edges, the front and back, and then you have side edges. They have a great null point, which means they reject sound. And
right. So like here's one. So like in the front, a ribbon, a figure of 8 mic is hearing from the front and from the back. It's like it's hearing from this side, it's hearing from this side, and what Matt was talking about, the null points. Those are the sides here, where it's completely deaf. Whatever sound's coming in this direction or the top or the bottom of the mic doesn't hear it, but it hears from the front and it hears from the back. So you have to sometimes control what sound is getting in from the back. And Matt talks about that in the videos. He shows very effective methods for dealing with the backside if you don't want anything coming in the backside. So that's a figure 8.
Yeah. You know, one thing in the video I didn't mention though, and I thought about later, is you can shut down the backside of a ribbon mic too much, and it'll start to sound a little phasey and weird. You know, if you try to put a baffle up like 6 inches from the back, it might sound a little funny because they are meant to. I mean, that's what gives them their magic is, you know, they are hearing on the backside, and they need to be able to. They need some air on the backside. I guess is what I'm saying.
They do. They need to breathe some. If you do choke off the back, yeah, it starts to get kind of weird. It's kind of like if you do this with your ears, you put your hands up here and listen to, you know, us talking or listen to anything. Things sound really weird. It's very directional. You're only getting what's here, but you do that. You notice how weird things sound. And you take your hands away. Wow, all the air's opened up. You're getting everything, and that's.
Yeah.
Like a ribbon doesn't want to get too choked off on the back, or like Matt said, it'll get phasey, which is a kind of a strange sound that's just not good.
Yeah. You know, and another thing about the ribbon mics too, the figure 8 pattern on any mic is the null points are extremely useful. You know, like maybe if you're doing a guitar vocal or something, you know, you can use that null point to keep the vocal from getting into the guitar mic. You know, so those null points on microphones, whether it's cardioid or figure 8 or hypercardioid, they're extremely useful. You know, you thinking about that and trying to use those null points to your advantage.
Right. Null point is the engineering term for the deaf point. It's like where the microphone doesn't hear.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like with the 121, you're hearing front and back. The null points are the sides.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where.
How does that compare to a cardioid pattern?
Well, like say an SM57 is a cardioid pattern. A lot of condensers are cardioid. That's the most common pattern is a cardioid pattern, which means it has a null point, a rejection point on the back, but it's hearing the sides and front. You know, and top and bottom too. I mean, it's a sphere of sound rather than just a front and back. Like ribbon is an actual ribbon inside there that, you know, sits there and fluctuates. Mm-hmm. So it's yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. But you know, a lot of tube mics actually have switchable polar patterns. You can use the figure 8 or cardioid or hypercardioid. Omni is a great polar pattern too. It helps fight phase. If you're using 2 mics at once, you might want to try, you know, having 2 Omni pattern microphones if you're going to double mic a guitar or something to start out with, because you're not going to get as much phase problems in between them.
Yeah, you've mentioned phase a little bit. So, sorry, you've mentioned phase a couple times. Can you explain what that is on a basic level, Matt?
Oh yeah, sure. So phase is positive and negative impulses that a mic delivers. So kick drum is the best way to describe like how a microphone works. Is you have a diaphragm in front of a kick drum. When you hit that kick drum, a puff of air comes out. That's a positive pulse. Hits the diaphragm, pushes the diaphragm back, you know, and that's how it hears. Whether that diaphragm goes back or it gets pulled out is phase.
What would it sound like if I were recording? You know, if I had set up 2 mics at home, and how would I know that something is out of phase?
So if you have 2 microphones, this is where if you're using 2, you need to pay attention a lot more. If say equal distance, so if you're using, say like we did in the video, we're using 2 Royers on the banjo. The distance they are from the banjo should be even, because as she hits that note on the banjo, it's pushing out sound pressure level waves. And as that hits the diaphragm of the mic, it might hit at a different time. So one mic is hearing at one point in time, another mic will be hearing a little bit later. And those, I'm not doing a good job explaining.
That's actually pretty good. You're right. It's like sound hits, it moves pretty fast, but if it hits one point sooner and hits another point later, the difference in those 2 points getting hit when you combine them will literally like dip out some frequencies or make some frequencies sound weird. You can literally take two mics and almost get a sort of effect as sound hits them at different times. But when sound hits them in an identical time, it sounds very natural. You have the same sound operating on those mics at the same time.
Yeah, they're in phase. They're listening to the same instrument in phase with each other.
Yeah.
So, and that, that's where the 3-to-1 rule comes in. A lot of times, that's a good starting point. Is the distance wise, 3-to-1, or easiest to go even.
What might I hear if I recorded something out of phase? What might I be looking for to know if it might be wrong?
Clarity on the high end and punch on the low end. You'll definitely lose your low end punch, and the detail on the high end might get a little warbly sounding and not maybe a little muffled sounding. A lot of times low end presence and high end detail are the two things I notice instantly.
And it's an interesting thing. An experienced engineer, an inexperienced engineer could set some stuff up and record and go cool, and then have an experienced engineer come in, move the mics a little bit, and it's just got so much more, like Matt was talking about, the low end, the highs. And it's just understanding how the mics want to hear sound, how they want to, how you want to record that sound. It is nice to work with them. You'll notice in one of the videos that will be posted very soon, where Stuart Duncan has one microphone in front and then pulls another around and puts it to the right of himself and moves it a couple times. And he doesn't have an exact phase relationship there. The phase isn't perfect, but it's close enough and it sounds great. I mean, close enough really does work most of the time. And close enough, you've got a little wiggle room. So it's not like some exact science, but to get it dead right on some instruments is important, like electric guitar, because a lot of times you're very close to a guitar cabinet, and a little bit of difference can really change how great the sound is. But with something like the banjo, it doesn't have to be super exact. The closer you get it, the better. But with some wiggle room, it's going to sound great if you've got them basically in the right spots.
And then in a recording situation, is there certain situations you would choose a ribbon over a condenser, over a dynamic? Maybe if they're recording by themselves, or if they're recording with a group live, or if there's louder instruments, if it's not just an acoustic group, if there might be a drum set involved as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. That's the whole trick, is choosing the right microphones and for the situation. A lot of drums, they'll use a lot of dynamic mics because they can handle high SPL, loud drums, getting back and put a mic right up on it. Ribbons are more delicate. If you put a ribbon mic on a kick drum, you might blow the ribbon out. You
will blow the ribbon out.
You will blow the ribbon.
Yeah.
And so they're delicate microphones. You got to be careful with them. And SPL, sound pressure level, is what we talk about to what mic handle. Condenser microphones often come with pads for that same reason. But so yeah, I guess I don't know if that answers the question.
If I was in a bluegrass band recording live, is there certain would I?
Well,
depend upon the room as well.
A huge thing when we talk about in the video too is the room you're in. I mean, if you're in a drywall square room that sounds like crap, the band's not going to sound good in there, you know, or the guitar's not going to, nothing will sound good in there because microphones are listening, you know, just like our ears are. You know, you hear the room, you hear where you are.
I think when you walk into a room that doesn't sound great, our ears sort of tend to adjust for it. But you start recording in a room that has issues, and the recording system's not going to adjust at all. You're going to pull stuff up, listen back, and go, "Whoa, you know what's happening." So Matt actually talks in the videos about how to control, you know, the sound coming into the microphone from different angles, and it's pretty effective. Matt, you did it with a microphone stand and like a big cloth.
Yeah.
Anybody could do this, but it really makes a difference.
Any tricks like that, like you showed in the video, any basic tricks somebody could do at home without spending a lot of money on sound treatment and everything?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. Like get a comforter, you know, a thicker blanket, like a packing blanket or a comforter, drape over a microphone stand, you know, and you can, it's a really maneuverable baffle. You can move around and really try to control the room. You know, a lot of people that have home rooms too, they'll hang blankets on the walls and stuff like that. Sometimes you can, I think personally, you can shut down a room too much too, you know?
Yeah.
You don't, so you do want some air in there. You want some breath in the instrument, you know? But
you're hearing a band in a room, you're hearing all this stuff going on too. So, and which can sound pretty good. When you isolate every instrument too much, then it's up to a recording engineer to try to mix them and get back to a natural sound. It's hard to get there, but if you can record some of that natural sound in the process of recording, it sound pretty good.
And that's the most effective thing about home recording is spending the time finding what space sounds neat and good, what you're going for. Like, you know, growing up, we were in bands, we would go to parking garage stairwells and set up mics in there and record, and it sounded great, you know.
Yeah, you get all that echo, like a nice echo.
So
it's like who needs a cathedral when you've got a good parking lot stairwell?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, you know, thinking creatively like that, you know, and there's all sorts of things to do at home like that too. You know, you can control your room, convert your room into something sounding cool. Leave the door open and put a microphone in the living room or something. You know, if you're gonna do a loud instrument.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's no rules. It's just whatever you think sounds cool, and as long as it's in phase, it should come out all right.
Yeah, and when you're recording with one mic, you don't have to worry about phase. It's when you get into stereo miking or more mics, you have to be more careful.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have a real good thing, drums especially, but like if you have a close mic, you know, so you have a 121 on a banjo and you want to experiment with putting a microphone 10 feet away outside the door so it gets a little more of the living room sound or something, you know, you might want to hit the phase button on one of those mics and see how the relationship is between those two mics. Because sometimes you hit the phase button and all of a sudden it's boom, this whole other world opens up. Low ends coming in, high, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and the phase button means like a microphone is hearing in phase in the front and out of phase in the back. A phase button flips that. So the back side is in phase and the front side is out of phase. And and you can hear that difference big time.
Yeah. And measured in, you know, 360, 180, you know, 180 degrees out of phase is completely out of phase. And in a perfect world, if you have two microphones exactly in the same spot against an instrument, if you hit one of the phase buttons on one of them, you know, it should cancel out. You know, theoretically, in a perfect world, it would.
Yeah, the sound would just disappear.
Yeah.
Because part of the sound's going this way, the exact same part of the sound's going this way, and just goes to where sound dies.
Yeah. But, you know, all the early reflections and, you know, the room noise gets back into the mics.
Right.
So it's not going to completely go away, but you'll definitely get the idea of phase if you do that and what it sounds like.
But Dave, you'd asked about like live versus studio.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of people don't. Oh, recording live. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, live and studio are such different environments, and in a live world, you'll see a lot more dynamic microphones and some condensers in the cardioid pattern that are very controlled. You'll see them more in play. We see ribbons a lot on live stages on electric guitars, sometimes drum overheads, and brass. the louder instruments that a ribbon hears very naturally without accentuating the high, so you don't get your face ripped apart by high-end energy coming out of the front of house system. But most acoustic instruments, in most live settings, you're having piezo pickups and different in-instrument pickups just to deal with all the sound on a stage. It's hard to really put a microphone on an acoustic instrument on stage. I've done it. I love it. It sounds better to me. I don't like using piezos because of the sound of it, but sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah.
So you can work with that with a preamplifier of some sort, sound shaping. It's never an ideal sound, but it'll kind of get you there for live performances. In the studio, I mean, it's really up to what an engineer wants to capture. With acoustic instruments, you can use ribbons all over the place. I know on Banjo, Bella Fleck has used ribbons quite a bit, and a number of other banjo players have. And Matt demonstrates in these videos, Allison and Stuart. Stuart had said in the video that that for over 30 years, when somebody puts a good ribbon mic on him, that's when he's happiest, because it just captures the sound of the instrument in the air, which we've been talking about, sort of like the air in the space, just really well. Like I said, condenser mics on a pop vocal or on drum overheads where you want more energy, they're more in your face, and that's a great sound on a lot of things. And on a lot of acoustic instruments, you want that in your face kind of energy. You can blend ribbons and condenser microphones, or ribbons and dynamic microphones on some instruments. The blending gets really interesting. But I've seen some sessions where, like you look up the Goat Rodeo sessions, that Yo-Yo Ma playing cello, but it's a bluegrassy sort of a thing, and Stuart Duncan's playing violin on that, and we've got mandolin and things, and they use a lot of ribbons, a lot of Royers. There's a Royer on every instrument, but other microphones in there too, to sort of pick up a more direct, high-end sort of a sound, meaning like a brighter sort of a tone to blend in there. So an engineer has those choices when it comes time to mix the recording. I want to hear this instrument a little more bright. I want it to stand out a little more.
Yeah.
You can do that with EQ too, but when you get your microphones right, that's really your best way to go.
Yeah. And there's nothing like having say a mandolin. That's a great instrument that, a ribbon mic would sound. They sound great on. They capture all the warm wood and the body of the instrument, and they kind of tamper down some of the the chucks of it, so they're not so every time they hit a chuck you're not wincing. But you do miss, like, when they want to pick out a solo or something, you want to hear that detail. You want to hear the pick hitting the string and that movement. So a lot of times mixing a condenser in with the ribbon, so you get the warm round, but then you can also get that real detailed stringy, the pick hitting the string kind of detail.
It's almost like you're over accentuating that a little bit, but that's the art of recording. You're not always hearing an instrument completely naturally. You're hearing it with a little extra something that could be really cool. Like bringing in that detail just gives you that finesse in a recording that you want to listen to again and again. It's really nice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's trying to make it pleasant to listen to.
Yeah.
Without losing any of the detail of what the instrumentalist is trying to put across. To deliver. Yeah. But I mean, it's fun to combine that and experiment with that. A lot of times 57s and Royers are fun to do too. But I mean,
sort of an ultimate electric guitar combination. An SM57 with that mid-range punch and the brightness. It's got a brightness peak built into it, and then the natural 121 thing. It's like, let's say this is the 57, here's the 121. You put it on a guitar amp, and that's sort of how a lot of people around the world record electric guitars.
Yeah.
And I know there's, it's all about kind of experimenting and finding a spot that works for you and what you're going for and the room that you're in. But if you're just for their first placement to put a mic on, they're recording banjo at home, and they're just going to put a mic down for the first try, where would they put it in relation to the banjo? Would they put it on towards the neck, towards the tailpiece, and about how far away would you just that first guesstimate of what might sound good?
I would say right under the top string. The low, well, off talking about the banjo head, the lower back quadrant of the head, but that might be a good place to start.
Okay.
It'll kind of give the resonance and the tone without, if you put a microphone right in front of the band, like right in front of the strings where the picking is happening, you'll get a lot of the pick noise.
So when you see that quadrant, you mean like maybe like 12th fret up there kind of thing facing the body, or?
I would try the opposite. I would try a little more towards the bridge, not the 12th fret, but like, under the top string, maybe a little bit back towards the bridge.
Facing towards the bridge or facing towards the picking hand?
Facing towards the picking hand, yeah. Because the bridge is going to sound boingy, It's gonna like kind of give that flick that the banjo has, that flicky punch thing that it does.
In one of the videos, Matt, you basically showed exactly where you like to put the microphone. You had a 121, and you said if you move it up here toward the, too much into the body, it gets too warm here off the bridge. It sounds like this. You basically walked that through. So
yeah,
anybody wanting to see, Matt really showing that position can check out the videos, which should all be available pretty soon.
Definitely.
And, distance is a huge thing too. I mean, everyone thinks about, where to put it on the instrument, but also how far back it is really just equally affects the sound, proximity effect, obviously coming into play, the low end.
What happens if you move it too close or
too far? And that too, you can get into close to the ribbon and it just kind of sounds blown out a little bit, it sounds, the warm element comes a little too far into play.
Yeah, what happens is microphones develop proximity effect. It means as you get too close to it, as you get closer to an instrument, the microphone starts building up more bass, and it's sort of an artificial bass. So that's where some singers can sound so big on a condenser microphone with proximity effect. The microphone is artificially boosting the loads. But on an instrument like the banjo, if you get too close, that proximity effect will make the banjo too thick. Yeah. So somebody might put a microphone 3 or 4 inches off a banjo and go, wow, this is just all mud. Yeah. You have to move it back to get away from the proximity effect that the microphone has. And then things start sounding very natural. This is with pretty much any microphone type.
Yeah. I mean, try a foot, start out with like maybe 12 inches off the instrument. That does. I don't know. It's so, the good thing about recording great players too is they know what they want the instrument to sound like. So they adjust themselves as well. They know this and they can move in a little bit if they want. It's almost like playing, the microphone is an instrument too, just like a singer works a mic and, moves away when they're hitting real loud notes and stuff. A player can do that a little bit too. Not as dramatic as a singer, but, just moving in a little bit and pulling out just a little bit, really goes a long way.
Yeah. So when you're at home, you put your headphones on. You want to hear what the mic is hearing. Listen to what that mic is hearing.
Yeah.
And you'll find as you move, the sound changes. As you get closer, it changes. As you come back, it changes. And you'll find that place where things just sound right to you. And you have a little room to move in that, but the big moves make a real difference. And so yeah, you always see experienced musicians get up on a microphone and maybe move back a few inches.
Yeah.
Or move up a few inches, and they've got their headphones on and they go, okay, there we go. Yeah. And if you're doing this at home and you haven't had a lot of experience with it, boy, is it fun. You set up a mic, put on your headphones, put a mic, and just start moving all over. Hear what it sounds like coming off the headstock. Hear what it comes off, the body. Maybe listen to it, what it sounds like on the back, and you'll start getting all kinds of ideas of, where you want to put a microphone.
That's a good thing you just brought up. Is that a good, John, would you say that's a good recommendation is to put some headphones on and just kind of, and without recording, just, hear how it sounds coming through before you start to record and try these different angles and everything and distances?
Absolutely. And if you don't have much recording experience and you just want to spend a few bucks getting into it, you can buy a unit like this. This is a Scarlett 2. It's made by Focusrite. It's an interface that will go directly into your computer. You can plug a microphone into it, and then you can sort of set your gain there. But you've got a headphone volume here. You've got a headphone input. So you plug your microphone in, and it'll accept 2 mics if you want it. Then you plug your headphones in and get your level set where you're comfortable. And just start listening to what you got. Move around, set your microphone up, and try it in different places, and experiment. You could spend a day learning what a microphone will do in different places. Then this is what'll really get you. Different microphones will act very differently than the first one you put up. So you learn different microphones and how they react to distance and how they react to positioning on an instrument. That's where a great engineer really comes in. You might know 50, 60 different microphones and how they react, really good mics, and know exactly where to put them on a session. That's where you get the great stuff. But it starts at home. For a lot of folks doing this at home, it starts with one mic and just learning how that sounds and what it's going to do for you. You'd be surprised at how much you can get done with one good mic.
Yeah, I was about to say that,
Yeah. You could record a banjo part or an acoustic guitar part or mandolin part, and then sing your vocals on it. Maybe set your EQs a little differently on each track to make them sound a little different. But you can get a lot done with one good mic. If it's a really cheap mic, they'll tend to get very bright in the high end. And as you start combining all the instruments, you bring up the banjo and the acoustic guitar and whatever else you're playing in the vocal, you'll find a whole lot of treble. A lot of high end is kind of painful, and you have to start trying to control that. But if you start with a microphone that's very natural and you bring up your faders and you start listening to this, if you're recording multiple instruments into GarageBand or whatever recording system you have at home, you pull up those faders, you bring up the volume levels, and things just sound pretty good. And then you can start to experiment with them if you want.
And that's where you really start to notice too, is when you start combining multiple tracks together. It sounds okay, and then this one sounds okay as well. So a bunch of okay sounding things put together may sound like a nightmare. It's that 0.5% can add up to 20%, real quick when you start stacking things on. So that's something too that, John, you were saying, is how you adjust, wise, where you're playing and lean around on the mic, and find that good spot. Be conscious of, a great acoustic guitar by itself doesn't always mix in play well with other tracks, because maybe it has too much low end or is too hyped or just takes up too much sonic space for anybody else to really fit in there and sound like it's an ensemble, So you want things to blend right and feel right together too.
Yeah, so that's you can do some experimenting at home. Like, let's say you're a multi-instrumentalist. You've got 3 or 4 instruments. You get your acoustic to sound great. You get your banjo to sound great. You pull up the faders and realize the acoustic is too big for everything. You can go back and experiment. Well, how would that acoustic sound if I played it like this? Got back off the mic a little bit. Yeah. Made it a little less full-bodied. Oh, now that blends with the banjo nice. So it doesn't take that long to kind of get a feel for this stuff. Mm-hmm. But you do have to have some headphones on or listen through some speakers afterward and just get to know how these instruments are responding based on where you're putting that mic and how you're recording it.
Which is another magical thing about ribbon mics too, is they're forgiving, they just sound great, and they do play well with others, kind of thing.
They do.
John, do you want to talk a little bit about the different mics that Royer offers?
Sure. So our main, I guess our flagship mic was the first one we came out with, and it's the 121, and it's our most well-known mic, and it's a ribbon mic. It has a large ribbon hanging here. By ribbon, what that means is you've got this strip of aluminum foil, and it's very thin. It's 2.5 microns thin in the case of this microphone. And in some ribbons, they're even thinner. You'd have to stack about 50 of those to get to the width of an average human hair. So It's a very thin piece of material hanging, but we treat it, it's corrugated. So instead of just hanging in a strip, it's like a slinky sort of, it's got a pattern in it that's allows it to move and flex with sound when sound hits it. In the case of this 121, thank you, you're able to hit the microphone with fairly high sound pressure levels, like a very loud guitar amp, without damaging the ribbon. But they don't like wind at all. You get them in a windy environment, or put them on a kick drum where there's literally wind being pushed, and you can stretch that ribbon and you'll need to send it back for a re-ribbon. But anyway, there's the 121. And then now ribbon mics are by nature passive, meaning that they don't have electronics in them to boost the signal. So you need to plug them into preamplifiers that have a lot of gain for softer instruments like acoustic guitars or banjos. So we came out with another mic that's phantom powered called the 122, and here it is. So it looks a lot like the 121, but you turn your phantom power on, and this is about 15 dB warmer, or I'm sorry, hotter, more level than the 121. So it's great for recording acoustic instruments, but it's also great for things like drum overheads and electric guitars. When you hit it with very loud sounds, you go to the back and you hit a pad. It takes 15 dB of level out of it. And if you want to get very close to an instrument, it's got a low cut filter in the back, so you can cut that. And as you get closer to an instrument, you get less of that proximity effect we were talking about. Really nice on acoustic instruments. They're pricey. You know, gear like this is inexpensive. The 121 in the US sells for around $1,300, and the 122 sells for about $1,750. So these are investments. They're lifetime warranty to the original owners, but yeah, they're investments. There's another mic that we came out with called the R10. This mic is $499, and it's got the same ribbon element that the 121 has in it. It also has a 3-layer windscreen system that helps, you know, protect the ribbon from wind, so you can take it out on the road. It's great on live guitar cabinets and things. Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters were out on a 2-year tour that they wrapped up recently, and this was the only mic on Dave Grohl's guitar cabinet for the entire tour. But the issue with this recording at home, especially if you're using something like the Focusrite Scarlett, is that it won't have enough output. It's a really natural sounding microphone, and you can use it on so many things, but you're going to wish you had more level. So we made a device called the D-Booster, and I don't have one right here to show you, but it's like a little device about this big that you would plug the microphone into, and it boosts the level by either 12 or 20 dBs. So this on acoustic instruments, I love it. I love it on acoustic guitars. I love it on the banjo. Love it on mandolin and fiddle. But that D-Booster in line with it, which costs, I think, $175, really brings some life to it, brings the level up. Anyway, that's our mic line. Stuart Duncan is using an R122V in the videos, which is very similar to the 122, but it has tubes in it, vacuum tubes. So now you're talking a $3,000 mic, but it's kind of magical. That's a wonderful sounding mic. And then we also make these stereo ribbon microphones. So there's quite a few mics in the Royer line, but for recording banjo, I would probably lean on these 3 mics I've shown you, depending on what your budget is and what you're looking for. And you can get just phenomenal results with them. They're used really all over the world on all sorts of professional recordings, home recordings, live stages, and so forth. So it's a little Royer thing. We're also, pretty much everybody at Royer is a dedicated musician, and we're really into what we do. We love it when people get in touch with us to talk about recording situations or what a mic will do best, what to use them on, or if there's a problem with the microphone, we like to take care of things immediately. So we're a pretty passionate group of people. I'll tell you a quick story. as a guitarist, as an electric guitarist, I made my living as a guitarist in my 20s. And when I'd go into the studio, I used to get really frustrated because the electric guitar would sound so good in the room and right there at the amplifier. And then I'd go into the control room and it would just be missing so much body and so much of the warmth and the power of the instrument. It was just, you could get it to fit into a mix pretty well, but it was never what was actually coming out of the amplifier. And Dave Royer explained to me before Royer Labs, we had another company and we were talking about ribbons then, and he said, look, a ribbon mic gets things, it captures sound as naturally as possible. And the first time I heard a 121, Dave's prototype 121 on an electric guitar, it was like a revelation. There's all that stuff. I went in the control room and listened, and I felt like I was standing in front of my amplifier. And that's the same thing with like the banjo and the mandolin and different instruments. You can sit and play and then go into the control room or just listen back on your home system and get a sound that's so much like what it is you actually played in the room. And it just eliminates so much frustration for so many people that it's a very easy way to record music and get just beautiful sounding tracks. You don't always want a ribbon. Like I said, on a vocal, you want that to cut through. Sometimes on drum overheads, you want the cymbals to cut through more, and you want condenser mics. Like Matt was saying, you blend a 57 with a 121 on an electric guitar cabinet to get more of the brightness from it and the almost aggressive energy. So you can blend mics and get things going. But when you're looking for that natural sound in a room, the ribbon is just it, and it works wonders. And so that's our place in the industry, and we love being able to bring that. And all the people we get to work with as a result, is it fun. There's my
that's I mean, I agree. I remember one time I was recording and I've had that frustration many times where you walk in and it doesn't sound like my banjo. I have a very nice banjo and it sounds like this shrill, cheap instrument.
It's easy to get an instrument like that. You can lose all the detail of the body. Yeah. It's really easy to lose that. That's where ribbons come in.
But one situation, a good engineer put on ribbons for everything, and it was the first time it sounded like I wanted it to sound. And it's like, oh, the warmth is there, but you're still getting the high ends. It's not just kind of this. There's a nice balance between the two.
Great.
We do have a question in the chat from John Appleseed. He's saying, what's the best model of Royer to get near an old 44B tone?
To get near an old 44B tone, I think probably the 121, but there's really nothing that's going to get that tone like an old 44B. A 44 is that big RCA microphone you used to see pictures of Elvis Presley singing into, or Frank Sinatra. They're like shaped like this. They're about 7 pounds. And it's a very warm, very sort of old vintage sound that is iconic. But Dave Royer's whole approach was, Dave says, like, music really lives in the mid-range. It's the mid-range where so much of music is just alive and really speaking to us. And if you get the mid-range right, and you get your lows right and your highs right, if those mids are really there, you're gold. And that was his goal with all the Royer mics, just really pay attention to the mid-range. And that's in all the designs of our mics. Whereas the big RCA isn't so mid-range focused and has a big low end. It's a pretty cool sounding mic, but there's really nothing that's going to get us there. There's a company named AEA who does really nice RCA recreations, and their 44, it's kind of expensive, but it's a good, that'll get you there.
All right. Let's see, Matt, I think this is a question for you from Lynn Vogel. She says she's interested about your views about underhead mics, for example, the Shatton or the Fishman versus cardioid condensers, ABS, versus integrated with the banjo itself, like a banjo, electric banjo, or a regular mic like a Shure.
Well, for live purposes, they're great, because the isolation is the key with live, if you're going to record it. Well, and even just doing live sound, you want isolation. But I never use those recording. They don't sound natural. You know, that you can't get anywhere close to that with you know, using like a space pair of 121s or something on a banjo. Sounds way more natural than something like a Fishman would sound. A Fishman will, those mics will, they're good enough, you know what I mean, but they're not great.
Gotcha. Here's another question in the chat, and really either of you could jump on this. Are really dark acoustic recordings done with condensers, thinking like Nick Drake, mostly accomplished with EQ and post?
I would think maybe it's the recording medium, because Nick Drake would have been working with tape, older tape. Also, maybe he was just really close to the instrument. I don't know. What do you think, man?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
Okay.
It's also he was kind of dark. I mean, he had some beautiful music, but there were some really dark songs that were so gorgeous. That's partly him being in that dark place he was in too, and just the way he did them. It sounded like they were, you know, not really professionally cut, maybe, but there was a real beauty in them because of what he was putting across.
Here's a question from Carol Rehack. I was hoping to get a one-size-fits mic to record banjo and vocals for church. I have a blue Yeti. It's a lot of experimenting. Any suggestions on a a do-it-all mic?
I don't know. There's a blues. What is the Yeti? Matt, are you familiar with that?
Is that the USB microphones? Like, or no, that's not. I'm thinking of something different.
I think they do have a USB version. I think they make a standard XLR version of that.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that. I've never heard them, but
I wonder if she's talking about, which says for church. Is this for recording for her church or for use at the church?
She says to record banjo and vocals for church.
Oh, to be honest with you, I'm not here to just pimp Reuter, but this microphone with that unit called the D-Booster would be really nice for that, because you get a great banjo sound with this and off the body, but it's also quite a good vocal mic with that D-Booster, and you can use EQ. It's very easy to add a little treble to get your voice to cut through a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's some videos we'll be putting up on Reuter's website and on our YouTube page soon of a guy here in Nashville who he just sent me these acoustic guitar and vocal tracks that sound fantastic just using this mic and the D-Booster. So it would be worth looking at, and maybe check out some examples online to see if that's what you'd be looking for.
And that's the R10 you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the R10.
Yeah, I have personally. I have the R10 and I love it. So I have no skin in the game, but it's a great mic. I can attest to it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe Matt, want to answer this from Astro? I recently bought an AT2005. I heard it was a good one and might work well for banjo. I haven't even plugged it in yet, but it's a USB mic too. Are you familiar with this mic at all?
I'm not. No, I've never heard them before. I'm not sure.
Okay.
No, Seneca, they make great microphones. You know, it's a great company.
They do. They really do.
But I'm not familiar with that one. I've never tried to record an instrument with a USB microphone, so I can't comment on that.
I'm taking a quick look here to see if I can see that microphone. It's sort of what it's about. Of course, with my big thumbs, I totally butchered it. Audio Technica, it's a USB cardioid dynamic. Well, really, again, I don't know that mic either.
Matt, have you had an opportunity to record tenor banjo at all?
Yeah, Allison had one, I believe. Yeah, we've recorded a little bit of that.
Okay, because we have a question from Alan Jones. He's asking, are Royer mics good on tenor banjo playing Irish tunes like jigs and reels and hornpipes? And are Royer mics available in the UK?
That would be right up the alley. Yeah, I would highly recommend that. I think
Me
that
too.
would sound great. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're available in the UK. You can call Funky Junk or I think it's Studio Care. Any number of different dealers will have them there.
Let's see. So I'm just reading through the chat real quickly, but I have a few more questions too myself. Matt, what about, one of the biggest issues I'm recording banjo that I've run across, and I know it's very common, is pick noise. Having the metal picks playing on the metal strings, and you're getting this, you start to hear it, and with mics, that very sensitive mics, especially, and you're playing them fairly close, you start to pick it up. Is there any trick of mic placement to, we talked about it in the videos a little bit, but real briefly maybe?
Well, obviously, if you put a microphone right in front of the strings where you're plucking them, you're gonna get pick noise. That's why I was suggesting maybe start with the body, of the banjo, and try to start miking the head and thinking it more of like a drum at first, and see if that sounds all right. Because every banjo is so different too. It seems like every different banjo player that comes in here, it's a completely different animal. The way they play it, the way it sounds, everything, what kind of picks they're using. So that's why I always err to the miking the body first. Also, what kind of mics I'm using is definitely one of the most important thing. And I mean, not to press Royer, but Royer is a fantastic mic, especially on the mid range. It captures mid range detail, but not in a harsh way, and that really helps pick noise. If you put a Lemon KM84 on a banjo, you're gonna have to be really careful on where you put it, because it's going to be clicking and clacking everywhere. Whereas something like a ribbon microphone that can smooth out that, but yet capture the detail air of it. That is always the case. A lot of times I'll combine maybe like a 67 tube mic and a ribbon microphone, like a Roy 121. Sometimes the 122 Vs are, they do deliver that detail a little more like a condenser does. But that's what that's why I'm fair to the 121s.
Yeah.
But especially for things like and stuff. And other things like tambourine. I know it doesn't come into bluegrass and acoustic instruments too much, but man, I mean, you start recording things like tambourine and shaker and hand claps and all that stuff. When you start stacking that stuff up in a track, all of a sudden it's musical sounding. It's not all hype. It has a tone, and it has.
You mean when you're using ribbons on that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the mic choice really, and ribbons are fantastic at helping avoid pick noise. And a lot of it, so much of it's the player too. I think probably 80% of it is the player. So I don't know.
And this is just me, would I be incorrect in saying, if I was going for a real traditional bluegrass sound, Earl Scruggs, as traditional as it gets, versus a newgrass sound like Allison or Bela Fleck, or would you, on that traditional, they usually use like a Neumann condenser because it's a little brighter, and then on that kind of more modern sound where you're going for a warmer sound, would you go towards that ribbon more?
Yeah, definitely. And in either case, I would want to have a ribbon mic on it.
Okay.
Exactly what John was saying about electric guitar cat. It's going to capture the body, the meat of the instrument, a lot better. But yes, definitely Earl Scruggs style, high energy. I'll usually put a tube mic up, and tube mics are a different animal. It's like all different mics, they respond so differently. So maybe 67 might be a little warmer on the mids, or a little rounder, a little more present on the low mids. 47 U47 is going to give that have a little more air on it, and a little more detail, so you can blending those with ribbons, to accomplish two different things at once is extremely valuable and handy. So, but almost always I'll put up either a ribbon or a 57, because they capture this meat of the instrument, the wood, the soul, low mid presence, that thing.
Cool. And Bruce Mitchell in the chat is asking, do you use much compression for banjo? That'd be for you, Matt.
Not tracking, unless it's a player that's really out of control, dynamically, I might. But I use that. I definitely am careful with compression on banjo, because you can hear compression really well on them. You hit it a little too hard, and all of a sudden it's a thing. It's a different beast. So I would use it more to control the player rather than the sound. And I do compress later, mixing wise, have at it, experiment. Tracking wise, I try to be pretty careful with compression, at least on banjo.
Mm-hmm. And a question in the chat, for home recording, it just moved, sorry. For home recording, use two dynamics like an SM57 near the tailpiece and neck. Would I have a phase problem?
I guess that depends on where they're placed, right?
Yeah, I mean, more of it's the distance, I mean, if one is sitting, they need to be the same distance from the instrument. It should be fine.
Then we have a question from Rob D. Matt, how do you EQ banjo in foreground or background?
EQ banjo in foreground or background? I'm not sure.
I don't quite understand, but
like, I guess as a lead instrument or as a support instrument, maybe.
Maybe that's what they're talking about. Yes.
I usually don't EQ them differently. I try to avoid EQ. I don't use a whole lot of EQ to shape the sound, a majority of the sound. I use it to help me get there as a nudge tool. But you choose microphone placement and choosing the right mics are more important. And the more EQ you start doing the things, the more EQ adds phase and distortion as well. And so you're diminishing. The more you EQ, the more you're diminishing the signal and adding phase harmonics to it. So
yeah, you see most of your better engineers, rather than reaching for the EQ knob, they'll move the mic a couple inches.
Yeah. I think that you're going to accomplish more in a natural way doing that than reaching to fix the problem. Yeah.
Again, put your headphones on, put your mic out front, listen to, if you want something to be brighter, well, move your instrument a little bit and listen to where it sounds brighter. Mm-hmm. That's what a good engineer will do.
And as far as like foreground, background thing, I'm not sure what he meant by that, but if we're talking about support, rather than lead, a lot of times that's just a level thing in the mixing, a ride rather than a EQ. So I have done some things where I try to emulate that one microphone, old style recording of bluegrass, where each person steps up to the mic to take the lead. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I might add a little low mid to simulate proximity effect. But I don't know. Most modern recordings don't. People don't want to hear that. they want to hear a little more balanced and modern sounding. So.
That's good information, though, for recording, an acoustic instrument like the banjo, to try to fix it in the, in the placement and the recording process, as opposed to in post.
Yeah. And all the magic happens in the air in between the instrument and the microphone, and that's what the player is putting out there, and where the microphone is sitting. That's where it all happens. It doesn't happen with EQ and all the neat toys to, those help you a little bit, to fix little things here and there and to nudge it in the right direction, but not to lean on it as a tool,
So somebody with fairly limited knowledge of how to work the tools, if they have GarageBand or Logic or whatever, and but they buy a decent mic like the R10 that's still not too expensive, and just a basic interface can capture a pretty good sound, do you think?
Absolutely. You could make a top-notch record, if you knew it, if you're hearing it right and putting it in the right spot. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the trick, to good recording is the patience to find the right spot and to, and capture it correctly. That takes you to the goal line.
Yeah, you capture it correctly, and then capture a variety of instruments correctly.
Yeah.
If you got them all sounding good, getting them mixed and into a song that sounds great down the road is a much easier kind of a thing. There's an engineer here in town I know who's done a lot of work over the past number of years, who told me that he uses 70% ribbons when he tracks, because he says when he pulls up the faders, everything sounds right.
Yeah.
And that's his thing. Not everybody uses that many ribbons. I know plenty of engineers who just use ribbons to goose certain things here and there, and otherwise it's all condensers and dynamics. It's whatever works for you. But whatever that mic is, if you've got a good mic and you're recording it well, each instrument, like Matt said, that magic is between the musician and the microphone. It's what's coming into that mic and capturing it properly. If you get that instrument by instrument and build some tracks up, you can have a really nice sounding song with one or two microphones.
And if I was recording with the ribbon, with one of the Royer ribbons, with the figure 8 pattern, would it be a good mic with just one mic for a duet to go on both sides? Would that be
you can do that. You can do that. The only thing is, if the people are playing the same notes at the same time, you'll have cancellation, because you have one membrane responding to that sound coming in both directions. If they play the same thing at the same time, the mic will basically sort of stop. It just won't move, so you won't get a signal.
Gotcha.
And on Royer's website, we have an audio video library, and there's some great examples of some duets and live performances in there. There's one where it's 3 players. The Waylon Jennings, these great singers from Canada, had stopped into a radio station to do a live broadcast in LA, and the engineer loved the sound of them in the room so much, excuse me, that he put up one stereo Royer ribbon, and sorry about that. Put up one stereo ribbon and put 2 on the front side, left and right, and 1 on the back side in the center. And you had a left, center, right stereo image that was just gorgeous. And, so they were performing from the 2 different sides of the microphone.
Gotcha.
Really worth listening to. Well, I can't get this thing to stop. There we go.
I think I know the answer to this question, but we have one more question. Somebody's asking a good mic to record the banjo and the kora together. Any suggestions?
I've ever recorded kora.
But
I'm not actually sure what the kora is. I'm sorry, but
yeah, I'm not either.
But the ribbon is a good mic to record a lot of, a very versatile mic, and would work with a lot of, wide range of acoustic instruments. You would suggest.
Oh yeah.
I think any engineer would tell you that. They're pretty cool. Sound great on everything.
Yeah.
Well, we've come up to the top of the hour. I think we went over a lot of information here. I think everybody, I know I've learned a lot. Do y'all have any sites that you'd like to let people know about? John, anything you want to kind of plug right now?
If you would go to the Royer Labs website and look at the audio video library, there are hundreds of different recordings in there. They're all in decent resolution, like CD quality resolution, that's 16-bit. And it's a great place to learn. I see the graphic there, thanks. It's a great place to learn about a variety of instruments. You'll hear sometimes whole mixes, and then we'll go in and just isolate. You hear the isolated ribbon tracks that were pulled out from the mix. In other cases, maybe one or two instrumentalists in a room just playing some acoustic stuff. And others, full bands. Slash, a great guitarist, just did something in his home studio for us. Great electric guitars cut on ribbons. But you can learn so much about ribbons in that library, and it's really not. We're not really trying to pitch Royer here. We're trying to teach people what ribbons do. So it's a great place to spend some time. If you in the search, if you type in, acoustic, you'll find just tons of acoustic recordings. If you type in acoustic guitar or electric guitar, it'll just isolate in the library what it is you're looking for. Definitely worth spending some time. We're also building a page in the library to house the 5 videos that the 5 Deering Royer videos with Allison and Stuart that Matt recorded. They're fantastic, and Matt's teaching in these videos is just excellent. It's expert advice. You're looking at an instrument that Allison is holding. He's moving the mic. You can hear what it sounds like in these different places. It's really it's a great way to learn. And that page should be live possibly by this evening. You'll be able to access 5 different recording videos there, and we're good place to go learn. That's what I would pitch, just to go educate yourself on what ribbons could do.
And a good thing about that too is it has Stuart and Allison's perspective on it as well.
Yeah,
extremely important. Just for engineers out there, it's really important to make sure your musicians are happy and they're hearing their instrument the way they want to hear it and they enjoy, because they're responding to what they're hearing in the headphones. So it's a huge part of it. So having the technical side and all the little tricks or whatever baffling tricks and things to think about, but really getting inside, trying to climb inside the head of a musician and get their perspective is huge.
It's great. And Allison and Stuart are deep, man. They've been doing this a long time. So their perspective it's really educational and it's important. Stuart talks about how he feels when ribbons are put up on him, and Allison talks about the warmth and different things that they bring. It's great to get their perspective. I've found a lot of your best musicians will show up with their own microphones. Yeah. Or at least have a microphone type that they know works best with them, that they want to have up there. So I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's because they did the homework, just like we've been talking. Like they've experimented and heard all these different mics and know where to put it on their instrument that they like. The way their fingers respond to the bass or the banjo or whatever. They get what they need out of it when that microphone is sitting right there on that instrument, and that's through years and years and years of experimenting and listening to different styles and different engineers record them, and it's extremely valuable information. Yeah.
And how cool is that for you, Matt, when a guy shows up and says, or a woman shows up and here's the mic I want, I'm going to put it in this spot. Maybe you don't even know that mic, but okay, fire it up and wow, you learn something new.
Exactly. It's like, hey, you just taught me something. Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
And it sounds great.
Or they show up with that mic and you go, yep, that's the one. I know what we're going to get today.
Yeah. And sometimes, sometimes it's not and it's okay if they have their mic in their spot and you can give that to them in their headphones, but you can also put up a mic and record what you want to capture out of it, and they don't have to hear that. You can just hear it and you can use that in the mix, but cool. keeping your musicians happy is very important.
Yeah.
Well, thanks both of you for coming, and everybody be sure to check these videos out that will be launching next week on through our YouTube channel and on our website and on Royer's site. And thanks for everything you helped us with, Matt, too, as well.
Yeah.
So
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate being on here. And I really appreciate Deering reaching out originally and asking us at Royer if we were interested in collaborating on this project. And it has really been educational and fun.
Definitely.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Great. Take care.
Bye-bye.